We also are going to bring back the Immigrant Protection Act.
Great.
Okay?
Wonderful.
The Immigrant Protection Act that we passed last August by a vote of 11 to 5. Legislator Williams, I know, was upset because he wasn't there. We shouldn't have taken a vote until he was there, but it happened. And then we tried to override that, and we failed with that override vote in September. So we were not able to override that veto, but we're bringing that back. We may tweak it a little bit, but the Immigrant Protection Act is coming back in very short order. You may have legislation that you want to bring forward, or we get legislation from the county executive.
Right.
We get legislation from the county attorney. Legislators put through legislation. For example, the Immigrant Protection Act started with legislator Catherine Borgia, working through that.
Right.
And she worked very close with legislator Jim Mazzano, and we had all sorts of advocate groups working on that from last February until we finished that in August. We worked with the state on that. We worked with various lawyers on that, making sure that we had it tight.
Right, and one of the things, just to interject here, we worked also closely with the Legal Aid Society and the Westchester Black Bar Association, because I work with them on a lot of the. We have these programs where Legal Aid Society have in different communities meetings, periodic forums to kind of help people who have immigration problems and to kind of allay a lot of the fear. There's a lot of fear out there because of the president and the things that he says. So you need to have people who are standing there with people in their communities, so if they need help, that they can turn to a lawyer and get help. And so we've had this program. I've been working with Legal Aid and Westchester Black Bar, that we go to different communities. I think the last one was during November was in Peekskill, where there was a problem with the government. The last government they're allowing did not want to allow to have the program there. But we're going to help restart that so that it can be had in Peekskill. We had it in Yonkers, had it at the Yonkers library. And so the Immigrant Protection Act is more than just putting a bill in place on paper. It has to be where we also outreach and help people, because one of the concerns we have is that people get pulled over and arrested, and next thing you know, there's a report going down to ICE with their names. And one of I remember in the meeting, I asked the commissioner, I said, how do you determine who should actually, whose name you should send to ICE?
Right.
How do you make that judgment other than profiling someone? And that is exactly what they've done. They had profiled people and decided that if you had a name, a Latino name, or if you spoke with an accent, that would suggest you're foreign born, and therefore they called ICE in. And ICE oftentimes comes in, and people who were legally here, as well as people who were not legally here, were subject to the scrutiny of ICE. So
really, so they wasn't making the decision. That's very interesting, because you're supposed to make the decision after they serve their time.
Right. No, they didn't. As a matter of fact, I requested a report. I said, I want to see a report that you sent to ICE, and I got the report. They had somebody with a traffic ticket on there.
Right.
You know, that was sent down to ICE. You know. I mean, so it is important for us to have this bill that says, hey, in the county of Westchester, you are going to focus on doing the county's work, not the work for the immigration department and national justice department. That's not your job, and that can be accomplished without, I know, concerns about some or other security. All those issues are going to are worked out in the bill. It's not a bill that actually goes out and allow and handcuff the police from doing their job. But what it does focus them on doing the job in the county of Westchester, rather than doing the work for ICE or another organization or Homeland Security or other immigration agencies.
So you're an illegal alien or an immigrant that's not here legally. I don't know what you want to call it. Can you actually
undocumented person?
An undocumented. Thank you. An undocumented person. Can you actually go to legal services and get services?
Yeah, you can. Yes, an undocumented person.
Really?
Yes.
You know how many people are
Under
there are a lot of people.
Yeah. In White Plains, Central Hispano is very big into that. The County Hispanic Coalition. So that's just two I know of. In fact, I was at the immigration event last spring at St. Bernard's in White Plains. We had like 400 people there. Right. We had the mayor there. We had Commissioner Chong there, talking about why White Plains was such a welcoming community.
Right.
You know, so we want to do that.
Yeah, that was ruled by a federal judge.
Yeah.
Right.
That they just because they're undocumented does not take away their rights of every citizen. Mm-hmm. That and that was a lot of the problems with 287G, a lot of different programs that they were pushing forth, through immigration. Right. When challenged federally, they were actually violating people's rights.
Right, exactly.
And just because you're undocumented doesn't mean that you lose your civil and human rights in the United States.
And the thing about it is that we should never abide in this county rounding up people and as if some or other we're some kind of Gestapo organization. And that's what is going on in that. And so it's important for us to have the kind of policing that a resident, documented or not, see a crime and want to report it, that they can call the cop and report it. And they don't have to be afraid that if I call him, he's going to call ICE and I'm going to be out of here or something like that. I mean, that's you have to prevent, because when you have a process that targets a certain segment of the population, what you've done is that you've taken that population out of the whole crime fighting, the ability to help fight crime in the neighborhood. You have issues like domestic violence and domestic relations where people are not able to bring complaints because they're afraid. And so we've got to remove that fear. And we have to pass a bill that does that, and then we have to do the outreach so that people know that Westchester County is not the kind of county that you must be afraid of going to the cops if there is a problem in your neighborhood.
Right.
I wanted to add that, one way to begin to look at the whole issue of the role of state and municipal level police forces in enforcing immigration laws is to see this as an unfunded mandate. Essentially, were the local municipalities to follow the requirements coming down from the federal government, it would create an onerous burden on an already overstretched law enforcement, overstretched law enforcement agencies. My sense is that the best practices in the United States are that undocumented persons who have been arrested would be released unless they had a very serious criminal offense that would require that would deem them a threat to public safety, and therefore and I'm sure that the county legislator is going to include
we're not talking about in the debate. We're really not talking about people who are convicted for crimes.
Those
people who have been convicted
I want to be
are going
clear.
to be reported to the immigrant. They're not documented. That's not even an issue. That's been done all along. We're talking about people who haven't committed any crime, who've been living here for a very long time, most of the times, who are law-abiding, and haven't. That's what we're talking about. Because
I was under the impression
No.
that those people that had committed crimes.
No,
anyone.
They're not covered by this. The people who have committed
I
crimes.
mean, the people that had not committed crime too.
No,
I mean,
no.
No, this is not.
All right.
And you see, that's the problem.
But
When
Because I had a big problem with the immigration bill. I was like,
No. It's if you've committed a crime, you're not covered.
Right.
Okay.
And if there's a warrant out,
Right.
you're not covered.
Right.
This is for an individual. Traffic ticket. There's no warrant for your arrest.
Right.
We don't want you being reported to ICE. I mean, it's that kind of situation there.
The thing about it is that ICE comes in with what's called a detainer, a document, right? That's not a warrant.
No.
Right.
If ICE wants information,
there you go. Right.
they need to go to a judge
and get a warrant.
I'm talking about on a person who has not been convicted of a crime.
Right.
They need to go to a judge and make their case to a judge. And if the judge issues a warrant, then we have to follow the warrant.
Right.
But beyond that, we're not going to follow. We don't want the situation where our cops have to turn around and follow ICE and say, well, this agency we're going to do their job for them.
No.
You have a constitution that really
Right.
we have also an obligation to protect.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we would be subject to the county be subject to lawsuits also.
Yes,
As an attorney, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
You know.
What are some of the things you're gonna? I'm sorry. So what are some of the things you're gonna tweak?
Well, we're just going to look back at it. I did hear from Public Safety last year, after we had passed the bill, that they wanted to do some tweaking. I don't exactly know what that is. I've already talked to the legislator that is going to bring it back, and she says, yes, we've got a few tweaks we want to make.
Okay.
I'm not at liberty to say what they are,
Okay.
but I don't expect them to be major. And this is not a sanctuary city or sanctuary county bill. That's very important to say that.
I'm so glad you're explaining that, because so many people, the hype to be against this bill was that it was protecting criminals.
No,
we're gonna have all these people come to our county.
Nope.
It's gonna be the sanctuary city, and that was what was put out to vote against it, to be against it.
Right.
There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people read things, they see things, they hear things, but until you get down and get into the bill and understand the nuances of it, it's right. There's a lot of information out there that's not accurate. Yeah.
I wanted to add another point why it's very important that the county ensure that we have adequate protections for undocumented residents, and that is because we are now in preparation for the 2020 census. Mm-hmm. And there's a great deal of concern across the country that the Trump administration is creating a climate of fear and hostility amongst our immigrant community, which may deter people from cooperating with the Census Bureau, and therefore we could have a very serious undercount. Now, I do know, I've followed this distantly. I know that this has been an issue in previous censuses that were done here in the county, and an undercount, and that has an adverse effect on our federal dollars and so many other ways, and it's only likely to worsen if we don't have laws in place by the time the census proper is conducted that gives our immigrant community certainty that they will not be unfairly targeted.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, traditionally, undercounting has been predominant in minority communities. I mean, it's been. I mean, I can tell you, in the city of Mount Vernon, which I represent, have been substantially undercounted.
Absolutely.
And you're correct in that if you, given the message that's coming from this president, it's going to make it very difficult for people to cooperate with the Census Bureau, because they don't know who's knocking on their doors. They don't know if they fill out this form, what is going to matter to them. So I can see persons who are undocumented probably not even wanting to fill out anything and send it in, you know, given the circumstances. So it's important for us to also to have the kind of relationship as a county so that people have a little confidence. It's hard to have confidence in government as it is when you're hearing it from the top. There's what I call abuse. So at the local level, it is up to us to kind of facilitate a different level of relationship and communication.
Right.
There's also one thing important to say also, what's going around in the country now with Trump and how he is bashing all these countries.
Absolutely.
It's important to let the people know also that undocumented people are not only Hispanics.
Right.
They're targeting everybody.
That's right.
And everybody got to come together when it comes to that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I just want to, and I'm going to send this to you. I'm not sure if you're well aware. I'm very interested in what public safety has to say about the immigration bill, because they do have a policy that already mirrors what y'all trying to do.
Right.
So I don't want it to be, I want them to be honest with you guys. And I'm going to, it's policy number 1108, right? That's what I'm saying. So I don't want, they already
the
have.
policy was in place for a number of years.
Right.
And they changed it. You see, because
all right.
they changed it in that they were not complying with that policy. We had the public safety, the commissioner of corrections in.
There you go.
We had the commissioner of the police in, and we had them examined on the record.
Good.
And I come to the conclusion, if you go back and look at the tape, the questions I've had with him, they changed the policy. They said we have this policy, but in fact, they're not applying it.
Right, and that's
so that's why that's the reason why it's important for us to make it a law.
Right,
Because
absolutely.
you can't have policies that are going to shift by who the county executive is.
There you go.
Or the president.
Or the president of the United States.
Right, and I thought it was strange when I was when I was watching the whole thing. I'm like, wait a minute. That's not what the policy.
Oh yeah, we're aware of
he's
the policy.
He's going against his own policy.
Yeah, exactly. They were not following that policy.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we will
That
definitely
policy's
make sure
been in
that,
place for a while.
years.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think
Right.
they said 30-some years.
Yes,
if I
exactly.
remember.
Exactly.
I remember that correctly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they could not reconcile their actions to
With
what the
their-
policy was when the questions were asked.